Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and I've been playing a lot of Remnant 2 lately, and it's gotten me thinking. Storytelling, world building in video games. Important, isn't it? Well, sometimes, depending on the game, but hard to get right, perhaps. And that's the subject of this video. I'll point out that I'm not a professional game developer, nor am I really a professional writer, nor professional anything, frankly. I'm not that smart of a person, but I do play a lot of video games, and there are certainly ways to take advantage of the medium. The reason why Remnant has me thinking about it so much is that Remnant's world building is really bad, in my opinion. There is a lot of thought put into it, no doubt about that, but it's conveyed in a really bad way. A lot of it revolves around NPCs info dumping at you for minutes at a time, which is completely unnatural. Imagine you went to a city you'd never been to before, you walked up to a random stranger, then he sat there explaining something to you for 5 or 10 minutes with only the slightest prompting from you. It's a very video game thing to do. And no, it's not unique to Remnant, and yes, there are lots of video games that do this. I just don't think it's a good way to build your world. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Remnant 2 a lot, but I did crack up laughing when I was literally skipping through dialogue that probably would have lasted 10 minutes as this NPC just waffled on and on and on about the history of his world. There wasn't really any character to it, nor reason really for him to be waffling on about it, other than being prompted to by a guy he had just met. No personal spin. Just a guy reading out a Wikipedia entry. It'd be like if I made lore videos for Dark Souls where I literally did nothing but read out item descriptions, you know? Maybe that'll be my next April Fool's video, just reading out every single item description, I don't know. So, what are some better ways to go about it? Well, Dark Souls is an obvious answer many people will pop up with given the audience of my channel, right? So, how does Dark Souls do world building? There is NPC dialogue, most certainly. Quite a lot of it, in fact. Some might argue they do exactly what I just said. You show up, you're some random hollow, they info dump at you. Somewhat true, but most Souls NPCs explain things in a more personal manner, how it relates to them or impacts them directly. Take Thops, our crestfallen sorcerer in Elden Ring. He explains A. How to get into Hogwarts, B. Some of the history of Hogwarts, C. His personal connection, experience, and goals regarding Hogwarts. That's rather different than just B. Another big thing Dark Souls makes use of is item descriptions. You might think, that's lazy. Where is the info coming from? Why does picking up a sword impart knowledge to my character about something that isn't directly learned from the sword? Like, it's not like the sword has this written on it. I can certainly understand that answer, but I think it's like a game master or a narrator. The Souls games' item descriptions have always felt like a character in themselves. There's sometimes amusing sarcasm or little jokes or jabs thrown in there. Easiest example would be the item rubbish, which is something like, rubbish without value. Who in their right mind would bother carrying this around? Perhaps you need help. Quoted that from memory, so I might be slightly off there, but you get the idea. Very similar method to item descriptions though, that isn't used too much these days, sadly, would be characters examining objects. Take Resident Evil 4, for example. There are items and just things in the world you can't really interact with other than examining them and having Leon's presumably internal thoughts on what he's looking at. This is all well and good, but there's still more ways to build your world, and video games aren't books, they aren't movies, they are interactive. So item descriptions work in that sense. It's optional, you can look at them if you want to. Basic, but it ties into gameplay in some sense. There's other ways too. Some games might even tie the gameplay itself into the world building, though this isn't really all that common. It happens a little bit again with Dark Souls, with, reviving at bonfires and stuff being a gameplay mechanic and a lore thing. Another example might be Dunamis in Final Fantasy XIV. Spoilers for that game, by the way, so if you haven't completed, say, Endwalker, maybe skip ahead a minute or 30 seconds. But in Final Fantasy XIV's world, Dunamis is effectively an emotive energy source. The player's limit breaks are essentially harnessing this energy. Of course, for years it was just a game mechanic, but this still counts in my eyes as a sort of world building through gameplay, tying them together. Environmental storytelling is another, one that FromSoft's games of the last decade or so have excelled at. There are certainly other studios who are good at this too, by the way, not saying it's, just FromSoft, showing you things instead of telling you. You can design a map for a game and stick some burnt bodies in there, but you can also tie that into the world and the story, and you probably should. If there is a burnt body there, why is there a burnt body there? In fact, the placement of items, characters, and environmental doodads in the world, it all factors into this. And there are occasionally games where they just kind of throw things in where it doesn't really make any sense for it to be there. It's just there to be eye candy or visual clutter, to make it feel like a lived-in world. As for storytelling, a lot of games try and tell stories like movies or books do, which doesn't always work. Video games are not books, they are not movies. They are titles you can replay more than once, titles you can leave for a year and come back to in the middle of. You can go through them in a different way than intended. And some of this, yes, you can apply to a book or a movie. You could watch a movie in reverse halfway, come back to it a year later, and then finish it. You can replay them. You can read a book as many times as you want, but you get what I'm saying, right? It's not exactly the same. A movie, generally, you sit down, you watch it, 2 hours, you're done. A game can be, 10, 20, 100 hours. You might be playing with a friend and talking to them and not really paying attention as you might otherwise. And I seem to be somewhat in the minority in this aspect, but I strongly believe that Gears 1 and 2 in particular are some fantastic examples of storytelling in video games. When I say that, people usually go, Gears of War is stupid, it's just big muscle bros shooting aliens, and yeah, sort of, but I'm not talking about the subject matter, I'm talking about how it is conveyed. Like with Pacific Rim, it's a dumb movie, but it's a well-made dumb movie. It's smart dumb, compared with, say, Pacific Rim 2, which is a badly made dumb movie. Gears of War does a fantastic job of utilising items in the world that you can interact with to learn more about the world. It intersperses dialogue with gameplay, the walk and talk segments that became rather infamous. Gears 2 even had the best gamer mechanic ever invented, where you can press back during dialogue and Marcus will tell the other person to hush and to let you keep hobbling off into the distance. Cutscenes are typically relatively sparse and short, informative and to the point, whilst also displaying the scenery and world around you. The characters in Gears of War might not be super deep, but it's a game about shooting and chainsawing monsters. They don't need incredible depth, but they need to be characters, instantly recognisable and distinct from one another. Gears excelled at that. Marcus is the stoic hero, Dom is his reliable sidekick, Cole is the blustering, friendly giant, Baird is the sarcastic anus. They have exaggerated and simple characteristics that naturally appeal. Everyone has a favourite member of Delta Squad that they gravitate towards naturally. What about Gears 5? Does anyone like the main trio in that? What are their characters? I'm a woman. I'm Marcus's son. I'm the other guy. That's good, I guess. And you know what? Elder Scrolls games might have utterly nonsensical combat and gameplay and an overall lack of polish that I find unacceptable for such a huge publisher and developer, but they usually get the lore and the world building and such pretty right. In fact, you can learn about the world through side quests that don't really have that much point other than, well, for that, there's a lot of books that are in-universe books you can read. And of course, there's many, many other games that do a good job at all these things. I can't list them all, or I'll be here forever, but on that note, what are some of your favourite examples? Whether it's from a really big game or an indie game, a small game. Remember, this isn't strictly just the quality of the story and the writing, but how it's all conveyed, be it in a unique or just well-constructed manner. Like, there's a game came out a while ago, I honestly can't remember what it's called, but whilst you're playing the game, there's like a narrator who's constantly talking about what you're doing. Someone in the comments will immediately know what I'm thinking about. It's a game I have and have played, but I don't remember the name of it. But then look at Red Dead Redemption 2, for example. amazing with its nice seamless transitions from gameplay to cutscene, and the game's story is fantastic. But there are times when the disconnect between gameplay and story and the world can be a little jarring, depending on player actions, and it does rely quite heavily on cutscenes, and in particular dialogue, which again isn't strictly speaking a bad thing, especially when the dialogue is good, but it doesn't inherently take advantage of video games as a medium in all the ways that it could do. And one problem many games seem to have recently is over-reliance on dialogue, or not even that, just too much dialogue, constantly hammering the point into you. And again, Gears of War 5, I think, in particular, was so guilty of this, where the simple act of going to and through a door or an area has like 5 minutes of dialogue devoted to it, none of which tells you anything about the characters, the world, or anything really. It's just, there's a door over there. If we go through that door, we can get to the objective. Our objective is on the other side of that door. If we go through this door, things may improve for us. It's awful. Genshin Impact does this as well a bit. Paimon is just there repeating things constantly, and I don't know why, but I hate it. Anyway, if on the off chance you're a Remnant developer, and you somehow watched this and you're sad I kinda dunked on your world building, sorry. I like the game a lot, and that's the important thing, right? So don't nerf Ritualist. Okay, fantastic. Have a nice day. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.